Welcome to Valley Politics. I'm Terry Christensen. Are you fed up with the high cost of living in the Valley? Do you think the quality of life here is worse than it was 5 years ago? If so, you're not alone. 71% of the respondents to the 2021 Silicon Valley poll said the quality of life here is worse than 5 years ago, and 56% said they're likely to leave in the next 5 years. 56%. Today we'll talk about those findings and others with Russell Hancock, the president and CEO of joint venture Silicon Valley, and Lou Hansen of the Mercury News. Their organization sponsored and published the poll. We'll also have guest questions for Russell and Lou from Kelly Snyder of San Jose State University, Derica Mearns of Working Partnerships USA, and San Jose City Council member Sergio Jimenez. And that's what's coming up on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome Russ Hancock and Lou Hansen. Happy to have you here to talk about the Silicon Valley poll today. Just a little background on the poll I'll provide quickly here. 1,610 respondents, serving Santa Clara County, Alameda County, San Francisco, Contra Costa, San Mateo. Margin of error of 2.8%. So that's a statistically valid poll by what most statisticians or pollsters would say, with some really surprising results, at least to me. I don't know about you two, we'll find out. So let's begin by just asking each of you, what was your number one takeaway from the poll? Starting with you, Russell.
For me, it's that a solid majority are making plans to leave the Bay Area. Those aren't binding plans by any means, but 56% of the poll said we are considering going someplace else. The last time this question was ever posed to the Bay Area, that percentage was 41%. That's a 15-point jump. Shocking to me.
Absolutely. And why do you think that is? What's going on?
Well, this has been brewing for a while.
Yeah.
It's hard to live in the Bay Area. This is a punishing place, and it's a high-cost place. The housing is out of reach for so many. It's also a frenzied place. So for those reasons, I think folks have felt like maybe there are greener pastures somewhere else. Then you add a pandemic. You throw that into the mix. Now people are feeling troubled. They're feeling unsettled. They're feeling like there are possibilities elsewhere. Pandemic has also made people reconsider core values, and that's coming into play as well.
Well, you know, we've seen a lot of demographic change in these counties in the last, every decade for the past, but including the last 10 years.
Yes.
I wonder if white flight is some part of this. Did the poll give any indication that that might be the case?
The poll will stratify this question by ethnicity, also by income level. So we could delve into that detail. I don't have it at the top of my head.
Do you think everybody wants out then?
No, not everybody.
Yeah.
It's different between homeowners and renters, for example. It's different between income levels. But here was another surprise. The tech set is also looking for greener grass somewhere else. 53% of people working in the tech workforce are saying they're open to the idea of living and working someplace else.
And of course, they have a little more flexibility to do that than people in a lot of professions.
We should stipulate when they say that they can hold on to their Silicon Valley job without living in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
That's a breakthrough that came as a result of the pandemic.
Big time. Lou, what about you? What was your number one takeaway from the poll?
I think just a general sense that the pandemic has made a difficult place to live even more difficult. Just added a new layer of stress for people, and that yearning and that considering moving to go somewhere else has grown, as we pointed out. I interviewed about 24 folks who took the poll. And the general sense that I got was just a lot of concern, a lot of worry about what the future was going to bring, about how their finances would hold up, particularly if they weren't able to work from home. They would have to put themselves at greater risk to go into the office. So this was a really stressful time for people, and I think that's reflected in the number of people wanting to get out. And I think to build on what Russ was talking about, there's a stark difference between Republicans and independents and Democrats as to who wants to leave. And you're much more likely, if you're a conservative voter or identify as conservative, to want to get out of the Bay Area. And that was reflected in a lot of the conversations that I had. Concerns about too many restrictions on reopenings, concerns about high taxes in California, and really great concern over social issues, homelessness. So what I really got was a sense of angst from a lot of the readers and a lot of the people that I spoke to.
And also for conservatives, just being in the minority, a relatively small minority anyway in the Valley, and not winning, not very successful at electing candidates that might be their choice.
Absolutely. There's a feeling that they're just not being heard amidst the big blue wave that is California.
Yeah. Well, the respondents also said they feel more isolated and alone since the pandemic, more stressed, more worried about the future. I wonder if you guys think this is something that will pass as COVID recedes. Probably won't go away, but as it recedes, will this kind of stress pass? Will we get over it? Or do you think there's something else going on here? And Lou, from what you just said, maybe there is.
I think COVID is certainly part of it. And it may be a sense that things will get better. You know, I was just thinking about an interview that I did with a single woman who lives in Contra Costa County. She has a couple of dogs, and she named them after 2 local bars. They're her favorite music joints. That's really what was passion in her life. And now that's been taken away from her for almost 2 years. So I think what we have to realize is how deeply connected we once were to our communities, and how COVID has pulled us away from those things. And it's not just the workplace that people are missing, it's the arts, it's the culture, it's the ways that we can find connections to our community, to other people. And that isolation and the people that I talked to was stark and worrying for a lot of people. So.
Yeah, I work very actively with several neighborhood groups in the center of the city. And there's been no in-person meeting now for almost 2 years. So we're meeting by Zoom, but you all know it's just not the same. The personal connections aren't there, the touch, the hug,
Right.
It's going to take a while to get that back. Russ, what do you think?
I agree with all of this. The pandemic has introduced a general layer of stress and strain to a place that was already stressed out.
Good point.
Yeah. So it's just difficult. Now, it falls differently on everybody. The phrase "we're all in the same boat," that actually isn't true. I think we're all in different boats, but we're all in the same river. And for some, the pandemic, truthfully, has been an upgrade. Their work got better, their work-life balance improved, and for them, life became an upgrade. For others, it put them on the pointy end of stress and highly stressed. For lots of people, it was, as you described, isolating, and continues to be isolating. And so the poll reported this. High levels of respondents are saying that they feel stress, anxiety, or depression. So this, the poll reveals that, first of all, but second of all, I think we're coming to understand that this might be a permanent feature of life going forward. It's not that the pandemic will finally be behind us because the germs have been eradicated. It looks like we have a new species that is living among us, and we're going to have to adapt. And I think there's some sense of foreboding about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about work a little bit more, because another really significant finding, I think, from the poll is about working from home. And 95% of respondents who work from home, which obviously isn't everybody, but 95% of those who do say they want to continue doing that. 34% don't want to work from home all the time, but 95% who can want to continue that. Lou, the headline in your piece about this was, how long will this status exist, and is it the wave of the future? So did you get an answer to that question from the people you talked to?
The people I talked to mostly want it to continue, absolutely. Many had started out as being skeptics, thinking, well, I'm in the Silicon Valley grind. You know, I get in early, I stay late, I'm in the office, that's what I do. That's what work is meant to be. But we were forced into a different paradigm. And now people are saying, okay, it's okay to sit on my couch with my 1-year-old daughter and my laptop in my pajamas and get my job done. That's something that was inconceivable 2 years ago. And people who are fortunate enough to be able to work from home have really embraced it, as you said, about 95%. But for the other people, it's really left them behind. If you have to be on a job site, you've likely lost work, you may have been unemployed, your wages have gone down. And when you do earn wages, you put yourself at a risk of catching COVID. So there's really been a divide in Silicon Valley for the longest time, and I think this is a place
really
that's
emphasized the
really
divide.
widened it.
What about the two of you? Lou, are you working from home?
Yes, I am.
You want to keep doing that?
Well, we upgraded from a 1-bedroom apartment to a 2-bedroom apartment, so it's much better these days.
Russ, you working from home?
When the pandemic set in, we terminated our lease.
Joint venture Silicon Valley
terminated
closed
the lease.
your office.
Our entire team works from home. And the fact is, I think most of us have been surprised by how efficient it is. I thought it would actually be difficult. It took us about 3 days, and suddenly we felt like we were firing on all of our cylinders. This was actually perfectly fine. In fact, it might even be strategically advantageous. And that's the discovery being made across the land. Zoom has great efficiency. Zoom, by the way, a San Jose company.
Yes.
There are tremendous efficiencies to be gained here, and people want to continue to capture those efficiencies. I no longer want to drive a half an hour to a meeting and then drive a half hour back. That's a
short
1 hour
commute.
time.
That's a short commute by Silicon Valley standards.
That's what I'm saying. But that's for every meeting throughout the day.
Yeah.
The time savings is highly significant. Now, there are important things that are lost. The informal conversations, the rubbing of shoulders, that in-person possibility, the chit-chat that you have when you're walking out of the room. Those are really important conversations that no longer happen over Zoom. Nevertheless, the efficiencies are significant. And so when you pose the question, is this here to stay? It's really up to the employers. But here's the message that the employers are getting. We like this. The efficiencies are good. They save costs, they save time, and we want the flexibility. And I believe that that's going to be the watchword and the byword of the tech sector and in fact all of the rest.
Flexibility.
That the workforce will demand it. It has to be a perk that is offered to the workforce along with all of the other perks. The ability of you to choose your own mix, whether it's 1 day a week or 5 days a week in the office.
And this experience proved that it can work, because certainly a lot of employers were skeptical.
Yeah. Now, one very important question is whether innovation, Silicon Valley's secret sauce, would be hampered by the Zoom effect. Because innovation, remember, happens serendipitously and chaotically. It's sort of like molecules colliding in a gas. And the thinking was you just need to be running into people for real innovation to happen. I think now, 22 months later, we're seeing that innovation can still happen even from places of remote. And no surprise, venture capital funding has not taken a dip during the pandemic. So those innovative ventures are still happening. I think it's here to stay.
I have to confess, I was an academic for 40 years. I worked 50% of my time from home my whole career.
Sure.
So I know how it can be done, but a lot of employers, I think, have just learned
Right.
that it can be done and that it can really work. So that's going to be a dramatic change.
I don't think we'll see a world that goes back to one pole or another. I think the future in front of us is a hybrid.
Yeah.
And people will dial their own mix.
Is that what's happening at the Mercury News?
Yes, we have an open newsroom, but few people have been using it. We've been dispersed. Oftentimes that's good for a reporter to just be in the community. So it's made it somewhat easier for me because I don't have the commute in the morning. But it's also lost something of the energy of a newsroom, and as Russ was saying, the serendipity, running into people, trading ideas, and reporters and editors can be a chatty bunch, and that's sometimes a good way to come up with story ideas and thoughts and considerations about how we should cover our community. So we've missed a little bit of that. I think many businesses have to be more conscious of how to bring that secret sauce back. I think that's going to be one of the challenges going forward with.
But imagine what this would have been like 10, 15, 20 years ago when we didn't have Zoom or FaceTime or such extensive use of email and Twitter and all the means of communication. So we're all better connected, at least that way, by social media.
It would have been calamitous 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And Silicon Valley companies are the ones who made our current style of living and working possible.
Good point. Let's go to some guest questions. So our first guest question is from Sergio Jimenez. Sergio is a member of the San Jose City Council.
Yes.
Here's Sergio.
Hi. The pandemic has shown us that access to healthcare is critical, and considering that 78% of respondents rated the problem of healthcare costs as very or extremely serious, what can government or private industry do to alleviate this concern? Thank you.
Lou, did the people you talked to give you any hints of what they might expect?
I did hear some people that were leaning on going to therapy for the first time and trying to manage their way through this pandemic, the stresses, the fears, the isolation. I think it's a little bit more of a community effort as well. Well-being and mental health really depends on connection to community. It's an individual boat to build on what Russ was saying. And some people need different supports and different ways to navigate their way through this. So I think it's probably a combination of knowing your family, knowing your worker, and helping people realize what is available to them to help get them through this stressful time.
I was a little surprised by this number because in Santa Clara County, over 90% of the residents have health insurance, and the county board just voted to expand that by tens of thousands. So people generally have health insurance. So this can't be really just about that. So maybe it's about therapy and mental health, often not covered by health insurance.
Well, I'll add that one woman that I interviewed said she was an infection away from bankruptcy. So it puts a lot of stress. Simply because you're covered doesn't mean you can cover out-of-pocket expenses if you have a serious reaction to the virus.
Russ, do you have a comment on this?
Not really.
Okay.
I think it reveals a sense of anxiety that cuts away at people's sense of well-being. I think that's where the question's coming from, and I agree with the premise of the question, but the answer is, oh my gosh, healthcare has become a partisan question in this country. I don't think we make any progress until it's no longer a partisan question.
Okay, let's go to another guest question. This is from Derica Murrens of Working Partnerships USA. Here's Derica.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. And I'm curious about something that I read in the survey. So 59% of respondents thought that low wages are a serious problem. And that gets me to wonder what you think we could do about the levers of economic development at our disposal to make economic development and community infrastructure really transformational for folks. Like, what could we do to make every job a good job? Thank you for your time.
Well, that might be the magic question. We need more opportunity in this region. This is a land of fabled opportunity, but it's opportunity for those of us that have a particular skill set, and the tech sector has just leveraged that to a remarkable degree. But for the rest of the jobs that make our region or any region hum, what we're finding is that those wages are severely impacted, and now we're looking at inflationary pressures, and this is a problem. It's actually one of the premier problems now facing the valley. What do you do about it? I'm not entirely sure. We're talking about profound market forces. The only way to circumvent market forces is to take draconian approaches using hand-fisted government levers. I'm pretty sure none of us want to do that. And so it's just a conundrum. That's, I'll leave it at that. But I will say that one silver lining that I see coming out of this experience is that our frontline workers, the people in the service sector, are emerging from this with newfound stature and I think newfound bargaining power.
Yes.
That will help.
Yes, absolutely. Lou, any of your interviews give you any insights?
I think financial stress is certainly something that has been ratcheted up for many people, especially those who can't work from home. Covering housing for the Bay Area News Group, I realized that a lot of renters were forced into doubling up with family because of lost income, or even tripling up. So not only did that heighten the health risk, but the cost of housing here means that it takes 3 or 4 low-wage adult incomes just to pay the rent. That's has health consequences. That has great society implications as well. So it's definitely been a struggle.
Yeah. Well, gents, our final guest question comes from Kelly Snyder. Kelly teaches real estate and development at San Jose State University. Here's Kelly.
Hi, this is Kelly Snyder. I have a question today about homelessness. I see that as many as 46% of the respondents say that homelessness is much worse this year. And I guess I'm wondering, is it actually more prevalent and worse? Or is it just the perception of being worse because so many people are seeing the effects of homelessness? We're seeing it in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and places of business. And I wonder if it's just a perception that we're seeing more of it. And I wanted to get your take on that. Thank you.
This was something that came up among residents in San Jose, in Milpitas, in Fremont, in San Francisco. Homelessness and its visibility and the consequences to communities. There's great concern. There is empathy, there's sympathy for people who are out on the street, but there is also growing frustration that no one has solved this or even seems to be attempting to solve it. And I think in San Francisco particularly, and San Jose as well, when you have the professional classes, when you have people not going into the city centers for work anymore, what you're left with is a very visible social problem. And that has created greater angst, as we see in the poll numbers.
I can't answer the question directly because the census is only taken every 2 years.
Yeah.
By census, I don't mean the national census. I mean just here at home in the region. We actually do a head count, and we don't have that. We don't have that current information. So that's a non-answer to your question. But I will say this: there are 200,000 people in the region that were on the line, that were on the cusp of eviction. They would have been homeless were it not for the moratoria on evictions that were instantly put into place when the pandemic set in. Were it not for that, we would be looking at a full-scale crisis.
I know I hear a lot of frustration among, from my neighborhoods, other San Joseans, or from people who go visit San Francisco about this, and a common line is government's not doing anything. But that's actually just not true.
It's not.
The cities, the counties, Santa Clara County Voters passed a $950 million bond in 2016. $666 million of that has been committed. This stuff takes time to go through permit process, find land, overcome neighborhood resistance and so on.
Yes.
But I think maybe government's not doing such a great job of telling people what they're trying to do. And so some of this is perception.
Oh, no question. In fact, one reason we undertook the poll, my organization, is because perception is a form of reality.
Yeah.
And I think this question demonstrates that.
So I'm a retiree and I'm staying in the area.
Oh,
But so you're not getting my house. Don't get your hopes up.
well, you probably get a phone call once a week.
I do for sure. But 50% of the respondents say it's a poor place to retire.
Yes.
Is that a good thing because retirees may leave and open up housing for other people? Or is it a bad thing when we're losing our senior population? What do you think? You guys aren't there yet.
Yeah. It's a mixed bag. There are some people that feel like they just don't have good options because their money doesn't go far enough here, and so they would rather retire somewhere else. And that's what they're saying. This is a bad place to retire. There are other people who feel like they can't sell their home because if they were to move to any other place in California, the resulting property taxes would be formidable, and so that's part of the piece too. But there's another side of the coin, which is a lot of people are cashing out.
Yeah.
And so they're saying this is a bad place to retire because I can sell my biggest asset, and that will get me a palace in any of the square states. So we see that.
Lou, did you get comments about this?
There's certainly a lot of looking ahead and seeing when, by baby boomers, when they're ready to cash in the equity in their house and find someplace else. Where else that goes, they're setting up Google spreadsheets, they're having discussions with family members, where are the grandchildren. These are big decisions that there's so much to like here, and there's so much familiarity for people that a lot of them do want to stay. It's a hard decision that a lot of baby boomers are facing right now.
Plus, it's a pretty nice climate.
It's a great call.
Especially when we look at what's happening other places. Guys, we have about a minute left, but I want to end on a happy note. So tell me something you saw in the poll that really cheered you up. Lou?
You know, a lot of people are optimistic about starting a career here, and they're enthusiastic and know that this is a place where, hey, if you do the right things, if you work hard and make the right decisions and get lucky, this could be a life-changing experience for you in the Bay Area. And yeah, the weather's great too.
Good point. Russell?
This sounds like a contradiction, but people in the same poll said that they like the Bay Area, that they identify with the Bay Area. They identify with the Bay Area more than they identify with their city or even their neighborhood. They like saying, I'm from the Bay Area. That was a hopeful finding.
On those hopeful notes, we must conclude. Thank you, Lou Hansen, Russell Hancock. Thanks for being here, and thanks to your organizations for sponsoring the poll. It's really interesting information to have. Thanks, you.
Jerry.
We'll be back in January with a 1-hour special featuring the 4 top contenders in the 2022 election for mayor of San Jose. Meanwhile, you can follow us on Facebook, and you can catch up on all our previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org or on YouTube by searching for CreateTV San Jose. And now, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching.